The dusty main street of Lusk, Wyoming shimmered under the merciless summer sun of 1878 as Sophia Collins wiped the perspiration from her brow, her trembling fingers clutching the eviction notice that had been nailed to the door of her father's bookshop. At 22, with her father 6 months in the grave and her stepmother having abandoned town with what little savings remained, Sophia found herself alone with a failing business, mounting debts, and a head full of impossible dreams that no proper young woman should entertain. "Miss Collins," the stern voice of Theodore Drummond, the town's banker, cut through her thoughts. "I trust you understand that sentimentality has no place in business. Your father's establishment has been hemorrhaging money for years. The building will be auctioned off next week." Sophia straightened her shoulders, her green eyes flashing with determination. "Mr. Drummond, if you could just grant me a small extension, 3 months is all I need to implement my ideas for expanding the shop's offerings." The banker's laughter was sharp and dismissive. "Ideas? A woman with business ideas? My dear, your father indulged your fanciful notions of education and literature far too much. It's time you faced reality." He adjusted his gold pocket watch. "Mrs. Henderson at the boarding house is seeking a maid. That would be a more suitable position for a young lady of your circumstances." As Drummond walked away, Sophia fought back tears, crumpling the notice in her fist. Her father's bookstore was the only home she'd ever known. The rooms above it filled with cherished memories of her childhood, before consumption had claimed her mother, before her father had remarried a woman who viewed Sophia as little more than an inconvenience. She pushed open the door, the familiar bell tinkling above her head. The scent of leather bindings, paper, and dust enveloped her as she surveyed the modest shop. It wasn't just a business to her, it was the embodiment of everything her father had valued: knowledge, imagination, the written word. It was also the foundation of her own dreams, dreams that extended far beyond the limited expectations Lusk held for its female residents. Sophia had plans, grand ones. She envisioned not just a bookshop, but a lending library, a place where women and men alike could gather for literary discussions, where children could hear stories read aloud, where the ideas of the wider world could find purchase in their small frontier town. She'd shared these dreams with her father, who had encouraged them even as his health failed. But to everyone else, her ambitions were unseemly, evidence of a mind too educated for her own good. The bell jangled again, and Sophia quickly wiped her eyes, expecting to see one of the few regular customers who still patronized Collins' books. Instead, a tall figure silhouetted against the harsh sunlight filled the doorway. "Pardon the intrusion, madam," said a deep voice as the stranger stepped inside, removing his hat to reveal sun-bronzed features and striking blue eyes. "I was told this establishment might have maps of the territory." Sophia straightened her simple blue dress and moved behind the counter. "You were informed correctly, sir, though our selection is limited. May I ask what area you're interested in?" The man approached, his spurs jingling softly with each step. Despite the dust of travel on his clothes, there was something undeniably commanding about his presence. "Samuel Landon," he introduced himself with a slight nod. "I'm looking for detailed renderings of the land between here and the Bighorn Mountains." "Mr. Landon." Sophia acknowledged with a professional smile, trying to ignore the flutter in her stomach as she noted his broad shoulders and the quiet confidence in his stance. "I believe we have what you're looking for." She moved to a drawer beneath the counter and began rifling through the rolled maps stored there. Samuel observed her carefully. Though she maintained a composed demeanor, he could see the redness around her eyes and the slight tremor in her hands. He had overheard enough of the banker's harsh words outside to understand the young woman's distress. "You're Collins' daughter?" he asked, his tone gentle but direct. Sophia paused, a map half unrolled in her hands. "Yes, Sophia Collins. This was my father's shop." "Was." She hesitated, then decided there was little point in pretense. "Will be for another week, then it goes to auction." Samuel's brow furrowed. "That's a shame. Bookshops are rare treasures in these parts." "Indeed they are, Mr. Landon," Sophia replied, her voice taking on an edge of passion despite her effort to maintain decorum. "But apparently not treasured enough by the good people of Lusk to sustain one." She spread the map on the counter, pointing out the territories he'd inquired about, explaining the markings that denoted water sources, settlements, and terrain features. Samuel listened attentively, but his gaze kept returning to the young woman's animated face as she spoke of the land with unexpected knowledge. "You seem well acquainted with the geography," he remarked. A faint blush colored her cheeks. "Books have been my companions all my life, Mr. Landon." "Maps included. I may not have traveled these routes myself, but I've traced them countless times with my fingertips." "That kind of knowledge is valuable," he said thoughtfully. "More valuable than some might appreciate." Their conversation was interrupted by the entrance of Harriet Miller, the milliner's wife and one of the most influential gossips in town. She cast a disapproving glance at Sophia and Samuel's proximity before addressing Sophia in a saccharine voice. "My dear, I've just come from the Ladies' Aid Society meeting. We've been discussing your situation, and Mrs. Peterson has generously offered you a position as her children's governess. It would provide room and board which, given your predicament, seems most fortunate." Sophia's spine stiffened. "That's very kind of Mrs. Peterson, but I have other plans for my future." Harriet's eyebrows rose. "Other plans? But surely you understand that with the bookshop gone, your options are quite limited. A respectable position in a good household is the best a young woman in your circumstances could hope for." "My circumstances are still in flux, Mrs. Miller," Sophia replied with forced politeness. "And my plans involve continuing my father's legacy in some form." The older woman's lips pursed in disapproval. "Such notions are precisely why people worry about you, Sophia. Too much reading has filled your head with impractical ideas. Your poor father might have encouraged such fancies, but reality demands practicality." She lowered her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "Already tongues are wagging about your living alone above the shop. Propriety must be observed." Samuel, who had been examining the map with feigned absorption during this exchange, spoke up unexpectedly. "Mrs. Miller, is it?" "I couldn't help but overhear. I believe Miss Collins was just explaining to me her innovative ideas for expanding the bookshop's services to include a lending library and community reading room. Quite visionary, I must say." Harriet blinked in surprise, both at his intervention and at the content of his words. Sophia stared at Samuel, momentarily speechless. She had shared no such specific plans with him. "And you are, sir?" Harriet inquired, her tone suggesting that his opinion was of questionable relevance. "Samuel Landon. I've recently acquired the old Webster Ranch outside town and am in the process of establishing cattle operations there." He stated this casually, but the effect on Harriet was immediate. The Webster property was one of the largest in the county, and anyone with the means to purchase it commanded instant respect. "Mr. Landon, how wonderful to welcome you to our community," Harriet exclaimed, her demeanor transforming. "We hadn't heard the property had sold." "You must join us for dinner. Soon my husband would be delighted to make your acquaintance." "Thank you for the invitation," Samuel replied with a polite nod. "But as I was saying, Miss Collins' plans for literary advancement in Lusk are exactly the sort of civilizing influence frontier towns need. I, for one, would be most disappointed to see such promise eliminated before it has a chance to flourish. Harriet's smile faltered. Well, yes, in theory, such cultural additions would be welcome. But the practical considerations often yield to determination and vision, Samuel finished for her. Wouldn't you agree? Caught between her desire to impress the wealthy newcomer and her conviction that Sophia's ambitions were inappropriate, Harriet could only offer a noncommittal murmur before making a hasty excuse to leave. As the door closed behind her, Sophia turned to Samuel with a mixture of gratitude and suspicion. Thank you for your intervention, Mr. Landon, though I'm curious how you divine my private ambitions so accurately. A smile played at the corners of his mouth. I'm a fair judge of character, Miss Collins, and a woman who knows territorial maps as well as you clearly has an appreciation for knowledge that extends beyond mere bookselling. He rolled up the map she had shown him. I'll take this one. How much do I owe you? As Sophia named the price and wrapped his purchase, Samuel leaned against the counter, studying the shop with a critical eye. Tell me something, Miss Collins. If you could save this place, what exactly would you do with it? Sophia hesitated, unaccustomed to having her dreams taken seriously by anyone other than her late father. But something in Samuel's steady gaze encouraged honesty. I would transform it, she said quietly, then with growing animation. Books would remain the heart of it, of course, but not just for those who can afford to buy them outright. A subscription library would make literature accessible to more people. I'd create a space for readings and discussions not just for the educated elite, but for anyone with a thirst for knowledge or stories. Her green eyes brightened. Children's story hours, poetry readings, perhaps even classes for those who wish to improve their reading skills or learn subjects not taught in our limited schoolhouse. Samuel nodded thoughtfully. Ambitious. And the finances. Sophia's enthusiasm dimmed. That's the obstacle I can't seem to overcome. The additional services would eventually generate income through subscriptions and fees, but the initial investment to renovate the space and expand the inventory. She shook her head. My father left more debts than assets. Samuel handed her payment for the map, their fingers briefly touching in the exchange. Dreams often outpace resources, Miss Collins, but that doesn't make them any less worth pursuing. He settled his hat back on his head. Thank you for the map and the conversation. I suspect we'll speak again soon. With that enigmatic comment, he departed, leaving Sophia puzzled by the encounter and strangely hopeful despite the dire circumstances that still surrounded her. The following morning, Sophia was startled by a loud knock at the shop door an hour before her usual opening time. She hurried down from her living quarters, hastily pinning up her chestnut hair, to find Samuel Landon standing outside with another man she recognized as Lusk's only attorney, Gerald Whitcomb. Mr. Landon. Mr. Whitcomb, she questioned, opening the door. The shop doesn't open until 9. We're not here as customers, Miss Collins, Samuel replied. May we come in? We have a proposition that might interest you. Bewildered but intrigued, Sophia allowed them entry, acutely aware of her simple morning dress and the impropriety of entertaining male visitors alone. But with eviction looming, conventional proprieties seemed less pressing than they once had. Miss Collins, Whitcomb began formally once they were seated at a small table Sophia sometimes used for bookkeeping. Mr. Landon has approached me with a most unusual business proposal, which concerns you directly. Samuel leaned forward, his eyes intent on Sophia's face. I've been thinking about what you said yesterday about your vision for this place. It happens that I've been looking for investment opportunities beyond ranching." Sophia's heart began to race. "I don't understand." "I'm proposing a partnership," Samuel stated plainly. "I provide the capital needed to settle your father's debts and implement your plans for expansion. You provide the expertise and management. We share the profits." Sophia stared at him in disbelief. "But why would you do this? You barely know me or this business." "I know enough," he replied with quiet confidence. "I recognize a sound idea when I hear one, and I've always believed that books and learning are the foundation of civilization even here on the frontier. Especially here." Whitcomb cleared his throat. "I should note, Miss Collins, that such an arrangement between an unmarried woman and a male business partner is unconventional." "Most worthwhile things are," Samuel countered before Sophia could respond. "But to address the concern, I propose that this be a strictly silent partnership on my part. Miss Collins would remain the face of the business, making all day-to-day decisions. My role would be limited to financial backing and occasional consultation." Sophia's mind whirled with possibilities. Was this real, or some elaborate jest at her expense? Yet Samuel's expression held nothing but sincerity, and Whitcomb, despite his obvious reservations, was treating the matter with professional seriousness. "This is overwhelming," she finally managed. "I would need to know the specific terms before I could consider such an arrangement." Samuel nodded approvingly. "A prudent response. Mr. Whitcomb has drafted a preliminary agreement for your review." He gestured, and the attorney produced a document from his briefcase. "Take your time, Miss Collins," Samuel continued, rising from his chair. "Read it thoroughly, ask questions, make changes if necessary. This should benefit both of us, or it's not worth doing." As he turned to leave, Sophia found her voice again. "Mr. Landon, why? Truly, why would you take such a risk on me?" Samuel paused at the door, his expression softening. "Let's just say I recognize the look of someone with dreams too big for others' comfort but too important to abandon. I've worn that look myself." His blue eyes held hers for a moment longer than strictly proper. "Dream bigger, Miss Collins. I'll help you build it." After they departed, Sophia sat motionless, the contract before her, those words echoing in her mind. Dream bigger. For years, she'd been told to dream smaller, to contain her ambitions within the tight boundaries of what was deemed appropriate for a woman. And now this stranger, this cowboy turned rancher, was offering her the opposite advice and the means to follow it. With trembling hands, she began to read the contract, scarcely daring to believe that her darkest hour might actually be the dawn of something extraordinary. The contract was surprisingly straightforward. Samuel would provide the capital to clear the bookshop's debts and fund renovations and inventory expansion. Sophia would contribute her expertise and labor. Profits would be shared equally after expenses, and a modest salary for Sophia. Most importantly, she would retain full autonomy in running the business, with Samuel's input limited to major financial decisions. Over the next 3 days, Sophia carefully considered the proposal. She consulted with Judge Parker, the only person in town who had consistently shown her genuine respect since her father's death. The elderly jurist reviewed the contract, and finding it sound, advised her that while the arrangement was indeed unusual, it contained no hidden traps he could discern. "The question isn't whether the contract is fair, Sophia," the judge told her, his weathered face kind but serious. "It's whether you trust this man's intentions. Business partnerships are like marriages. In some ways they require good faith from both parties to succeed." Sophia thought about Samuel Landon, about the directness of his gaze and the respect with which he had addressed her ideas. She thought about his words, "dream bigger," and the quiet conviction behind them. On the fourth day, she made her decision. She sent a note to the Webster Ranch requesting a meeting, and by afternoon, Samuel was once again standing in her bookshop. "I'll sign the contract," Sophia stated without preamble, with one condition. Samuel raised an eyebrow. "Name it. I want to understand why." "Not just the business rationale, but the real reason you're doing this. No one offers such an opportunity without deeper motivations." Samuel was silent for a long moment, and Sophia feared she had overstepped. Then he moved to the window, looking out at the dusty street as if gathering his thoughts. "My father was a coal miner in Pennsylvania," he finally said, his voice quiet but clear. "He died young like so many others, leaving my mother with 5 children and no means of support. I was the oldest at 12. He turned to face her. "There was a small library in our town, run by a woman not unlike you, educated, passionate about books, unwilling to accept the limitations others tried to place on her. She saw something in me, a hunger for knowledge, perhaps, and she gave me access to books my family could never have afforded." He paced slowly across the shop floor. "Those books opened worlds to me. They showed me possibilities beyond the minds that had killed my father. They gave me the knowledge and confidence to apprentice to a cattle broker, to save every penny, to eventually make my way west and build something of my own." His blue eyes met hers. "That librarian changed the course of my life with her belief that books should be available to everyone, not just the privileged. When I heard your vision, I heard her voice again." Sophia felt a lump in her throat. "So this is repayment of a debt." "In part," Samuel acknowledged. "But it's also recognition of a good business opportunity. Lusk is growing. The railroad will reach it within 2 years. With that will come more families, more children needing education, more adults seeking entertainment and self-improvement. What you propose meets those needs before they're even fully realized." He smiled slightly. "I may be idealistic about the power of books, Miss Collins, but I'm practical about investments." Sophia studied him, seeing now the layers beneath the confident exterior, the boy who had lost his father, the young man who had worked his way up from nothing, the successful rancher who hadn't forgotten where he came from. In that moment, she made her choice not just with her mind but with her instincts. "Then we have an agreement, Mr. Landon," she said, extending her hand. Samuel took it, his larger hand enveloping hers in a firm, warm grip that sent an unexpected current up her arm. "Call me Samuel, please. If we're to be partners, formality seems unnecessary." "Sophia, then," she replied, feeling a strange fluttering in her chest at the simple intimacy of first names. They signed the contract that afternoon in Whitcomb's office, the attorney looking both professionally satisfied and personally bewildered by the unconventional partnership he was helping to create. By evening, the news had spread throughout Lusk, creating a buzz of speculation and no small amount of scandal. The following week was a whirlwind. With the backing of Samuel's funds, Sophia was able to settle her father's debts and withdraw the bookshop from auction. She hired local carpenters to begin renovations, expanding into the vacant storefront next door that Samuel purchased outright as part of their agreement. The town's reaction was mixed. Some, like Harriet Miller and her circle, were openly disapproving of the partnership, hinting at impropriety and predicting disaster. Others, particularly younger residents and families with children, expressed enthusiasm for the planned lending library and reading programs. Theodore Drummond, the banker who had been so dismissive of Sophia's ideas, now treated her with grudging respect, though his eyes narrowed with suspicion whenever Samuel visited the shop to check on progress. And Samuel did visit, frequently. Though true to his word about allowing Sophia autonomous management, He took a genuine interest in the transformation of the space. Their discussions about book selections, furniture arrangements, and community programs often extended into conversations about literature they had both read, places they hoped to see, and experiences that had shaped them. Sophia found herself looking forward to these visits with an eagerness that both thrilled and alarmed her. Samuel was unlike any man she had ever known, educated yet unpretentious, successful yet compassionate, strong in his opinions yet genuinely interested in hers. He treated her as an equal, a concept so foreign in her experience with men that it took her weeks to fully believe it was sincere. One evening in late August, as they reviewed plans for the grand reopening scheduled for the following month, Samuel arrived at the shop with an unexpected addition to their usual discussions. "I have something for you," he said, producing a small wrapped package from his coat pocket. "Consider it a gift to commemorate our partnership." Sophia unwrapped it carefully to reveal a beautifully bound copy of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. She gasped softly, running her fingertips over the embossed leather. "This is the 1876 edition," she said in awe. "How did you find it?" Samuel smiled, pleased by her recognition of the book's significance. "I have contacts in Denver who located it. I remembered you mentioning that your father had owned a copy, but was forced to sell it during difficult times." Sophia opened the volume reverently, emotion welling in her throat. "He loved Whitman, said he was the voice of the new America, raw, honest, embracing both the beautiful and the brutal." She looked up at Samuel, her eyes shining. "This means more than I can express." "Poetry has that effect," Samuel replied softly, "saying what ordinary words cannot." Their eyes held for a long moment, something unspoken passing between them. Sophia was the first to look away, suddenly conscious of their solitude in the shop after hours, of the impropriety that would be perceived if anyone were to see them together in such an intimate moment. Samuel seemed to sense her discomfort. "It's getting late. I should let you rest tomorrow. We'll be busy with the new shelving arriving." As he turned to leave, Sophia found herself saying, Would you like to stay for tea?" "I rarely have the opportunity to discuss poetry with someone who appreciates it." She immediately felt foolish for the invitation. It was inappropriate by any standard of propriety, but Samuel's face lit up with genuine pleasure. "I'd like that very much," he replied simply. That evening marked a subtle shift in their relationship. Over tea in the small sitting room above the shop, they discussed not just Whitman but Emerson, Thoreau, and the English poets Sophia had grown to love under her father's guidance. Samuel revealed a depth of literary knowledge that surprised and delighted her, speaking with passion about how certain poems had sustained him through difficult times. "Words have power," he said as the evening grew late. "They can wound or heal, imprison or liberate. That's why what you're creating here matters so much." "What we're creating," Sophia corrected gently. Samuel smiled, the warmth in his eyes making her heart skip. "Yes, what we're creating." As September approached, the renovation of Collins Books, now renamed Collins Books and Lending Library, neared completion. Sophia had hired 2 assistants. Abigail Wright, a middle-aged widow with a background in teaching, and Thomas Murphy, a young man with a slight limp from a childhood injury who had a gift for organization and a passion for Western literature. The expanded space was transformed. The original bookshop remained but had been refreshed with new paint, better lighting, and more efficient displays. The adjacent space now housed the lending library, with comfortable reading nooks, a large round table for discussions, and smaller desks for quiet study. At the back, a children's corner featured lower shelves, colorful cushions, and illustrated books carefully selected to capture young imaginations. 3 days before the grand reopening, disaster struck. Sophia arrived at the shop in the morning to find water pouring from the ceiling, damaging books, furniture, and newly painted walls. A pipe had burst in the apartment above, and the resulting flood threatened to destroy weeks of work and thousands of dollars in inventory. Panic threatened to overwhelm her as she frantically moved books away from the worst of the leaking. Thomas and Abigail arrived and immediately joined the effort, but the damage was mounting by the minute. Samuel appeared within the hour, summoned by a message Sophia had desperately sent to the ranch. He took in the scene with a calm assessment that steadied her own rising hysteria. "Thomas, find the town plumber and bring him here immediately. Offer double his usual rate if necessary," Samuel directed. "Abigail, get as many dry cloths and buckets as you can gather." He turned to Sophia, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "This isn't the end. It's a setback, nothing more." His confidence grounded her, and together they organized a brigade of volunteers who appeared throughout the day, many of them the same townspeople who had been skeptical of Sophia's venture. They moved books, mopped floors, and helped assess the damage. By evening, the immediate crisis was contained. The plumber had repaired the pipe, and though the cleanup would continue for days, the disaster had been mitigated. Exhausted, Sophia sat on a step ladder in the middle of the shop, surveying the damage as the last of the volunteers departed. "We'll need to delay the opening," she said dejectedly, as Samuel brought her a cup of coffee from the cafe across the street. "At least 2 weeks, maybe more." "Then we delay it," Samuel replied matter-of-factly, sitting beside her. "The important thing is that the core of what we're building remains intact." "The water damaged at least 100 books," Sophia countered, her voice breaking slightly. "And the children's corner. All those cushions ruined, the murals Abigail painted streaked beyond repair." "Books can be replaced. Cushions can be resewn. Murals can be repainted," Samuel said firmly. "What can't be replaced is your vision, Sophia. That's the true heart of this place." She looked at him then, really looked at him, the strength in his features, the kindness in his eyes, the steady assurance in his presence that had become so essential to her. Without thinking, she leaned forward and kissed him, a brief, impulsive touch of her lips to his. The moment she realized what she had done, she pulled back in horror. "I'm so sorry, I don't know what that was, completely inappropriate." Samuel's expression stopped her stuttering apology. There was no shock or offense in his face, only a tender intensity that made her breath catch. "Inappropriate by whose standards?" he asked softly, his hand coming up to gently cup her cheek. "Not by mine." This time when their lips met, it was deliberate, a sweet, searching kiss that spoke of feelings that had been building between them for weeks. Sophia felt as if she were falling and flying simultaneously, her heart pounding with an exhilaration unlike anything she had ever experienced. When they finally pulled apart, reality crashed back upon her. "This complicates everything," she whispered, though she remained close enough that her words whispered against his lips. "Life is complications," Samuel replied, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw. "The question is whether they're complications worth embracing." Before Sophia could respond, the shop door opened, and Thomas returned with additional supplies. The moment between her and Samuel ended, but the memory of it, the warmth, the connection, the possibility lingered like a promise. The next 2 weeks were a flurry of activity as they worked to repair the water damage and prepare for the delayed opening. Samuel was a constant presence, though he maintained a professional demeanor in front of others. In private moments, however, a brush of his hand against hers as they shelved books, a meaningful glance across a room full of volunteers, a stolen kiss in the storeroom when they found themselves momentarily alone, their connection deepened. Sophia knew they were courting scandal. An unmarried woman in business with a man, developing romantic feelings for him, it violated every convention of propriety in their small town. Yet she couldn't bring herself to regret it. For the first time in her life, she felt fully alive, fully herself, fully appreciated for her mind and spirit rather than constrained by expectations of feminine docility. The rescheduled grand opening of Collins' Books and Lending Library took place on a crisp autumn day in late September. Despite the delay, or perhaps because the flood had generated sympathy and interest, the event was a tremendous success. It seemed the entire town turned out, even those who had been most critical of Sophia's ambitions. She stood at the entrance, welcoming guests with a confidence that would have been unimaginable to her just months earlier. Samuel remained deliberately in the background, allowing her to shine as the visionary behind the establishment. But his pride in her was evident to anyone who noticed the way his eyes followed her as she moved through the crowd, explaining features of the lending library, demonstrating the children's reading nook, and discussing the upcoming schedule of literary events. Even Theodore Drummond, the banker who had once dismissed her ideas so callously, approached with grudging admiration. "You've created something quite impressive here, Miss Collins," he admitted. "I confess I did not foresee such a successful outcome when you first spoke of your plans." "Thank you, Mr. Drummond," Sophia replied graciously. "Sometimes the most valuable visions are those others cannot initially see." As the evening wound down and the last guests departed, Sophia found herself standing alone with Samuel in the center of the transformed space, surrounded by the tangible manifestation of dreams that had once seemed impossible. "We did it," she said softly, taking in the polished shelves lined with books, the comfortable reading areas, the sense of permanence and purpose that filled the rooms. "You did it," Samuel corrected, moving to stand beside her. "I merely provided resources." "This," he gestured around them, "this is the product of your vision, your determination, your refusal to abandon your dreams despite every obstacle." Sophia turned to face him, emotion welling within her. "I would never have had the opportunity without you believing in me." "That's not true," Samuel said, taking her hands in his. "You would have found another way. It's who you are, Sophia Collins. You're not someone who gives up even when the world tells you that you should." She shook her head, smiling through sudden tears. "Perhaps. But I'm grateful I didn't have to find that other way. I'm grateful for you, Samuel, for your partnership, for your friendship, for—" She hesitated, then finished softly, "for everything else that's grown between us." Samuel's eyes darkened with feeling. "I came to Lusk looking for a place to build a cattle operation. I never expected to find someone who would challenge my thinking, expand my horizons, and capture my heart in the process." The word heart hung between them, heavy with implication. Sophia knew they stood at a crossroads. The business partnership had evolved into something much more complex and profound, something that demanded acknowledgement and decisions. "Samuel," she began carefully, "you know that people are already talking about us, about the impropriety of our arrangement. If they suspected the true nature of my feelings for you, let them talk," Samuel interrupted, his voice gentle but firm. "Sophia, I've lived my life by my own principles, not by the narrow judgments of others. And one of those principles is to recognize what truly matters, what's truly worth fighting for." He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her palm that sent shivers up her arm. "You matter. What we've found together matters." Sophia felt a surge of courage, born of his conviction and her own growing certainty. "What are you saying exactly?" Samuel's smile was warm and certain. "I'm saying that I love you, Sophia Collins. I love your mind, your spirit, your determination, your heart. And if you'll have me, I'd like to court you properly, openly, with the intention of making our partnership permanent in every sense of the word." Joy bloomed in Sophia's chest, so intense it was almost painful. "You're proposing marriage." "Eventually," Samuel clarified with a slight laugh. "I thought we might take the conventional route of courtship first, give the good people of Lusk time to adjust to the idea. But yes, marriage is very much my hope for our future." Sophia's answer was to step forward into his embrace, her arms encircling his neck as his went around her waist. Their kiss was deep and sure, a promise of the life they would build together. "Is that a yes?" Samuel murmured against her lips when they finally parted. Sophia smiled, her heart fuller than she had ever imagined possible. "Yes to courtship. Yes to the future. Yes to everything we'll build together." True to his word, Samuel began courting Sophia openly the very next day. He arrived at the shop with flowers, invited her to dinner at the hotel restaurant, and escorted her to church on Sunday, his intentions clear to the entire community. The reactions were predictably mixed: raised eyebrows, whispered comments, some congratulations, some evident disapproval. Harriet Miller was among the most vocal critics. First a business partnership with an unmarried woman, now courtship. "One must wonder if the sequence of events wasn't planned from the beginning," she remarked loudly enough to be overheard at a women's auxiliary meeting. Sophia, who had once been wounded by such barbs, now found herself remarkably unbothered. "Mrs. Miller seems to have a singular interest in our relationship," she commented to Samuel as they walked together after church. "Perhaps she should take up novel writing if romantic scenarios so occupy her thoughts." Samuel laughed, squeezing her hand where it rested on his arm. "I'm proud of you, you know. 6 months ago, such comments would have distressed you deeply." 6 months ago, I was still defining myself by others' expectations," Sophia replied thoughtfully. "Now I understand that living by my own truth is the only path to genuine happiness." Their courtship flourished through the autumn months. Samuel divided his time between developing his ranch and helping Sophia expand the library's programs. Together, they initiated a series of literary evenings that attracted surprising attendance, proof that even in a frontier town, hunger for culture and ideas existed. Sophia discovered new dimensions to Samuel as their relationship deepened. Behind his confident exterior lay a man of profound thoughtfulness, someone who had taught himself to read Greek because he wanted to experience Homer in the original language, who could discuss political philosophy one moment and demonstrate how to mend a fence the next. He was both intellectual and practical, refined and rugged, serious and surprisingly playful when circumstances permitted. For his part, Samuel was continuously impressed by Sophia's growth. The somewhat timid bookseller he had first met was blossoming into a community leader, someone who spoke confidently at town meetings, who had initiated a literacy program for adults that was changing lives, who balanced business acumen with compassion in ways that earned her increasing respect. By Christmas, their intention to marry was formally announced. The wedding was set for April, allowing time for Samuel to complete the expansion of his ranch house, and for Sophia to ensure the bookshop and library were well established enough to sustain a brief absence during their honeymoon. Winter in Wyoming brought its challenges: blizzards that kept customers away from the shop for days, frigid temperatures that made the journey between town and Samuel's ranch treacherous, illness that swept through Lusk, claiming several lives and leaving many others, including Sophia, weakened for weeks. Yet even these hardships seemed to strengthen their bond. When Sophia fell ill with influenza in February, Samuel stayed in town, taking a room at the hotel so he could check on her throughout each day, bringing broth from the hotel restaurant, reading to her when she was too weak to hold a book herself. His tenderness during her illness revealed yet another facet of the man she was coming to love more deeply with each passing day. As spring approached and wedding preparations intensified, an unexpected letter arrived from Denver. An acquaintance of Samuel's, a businessman named Elliot Parker, wrote to inform him that he would be passing through Lusk on his way to Montana and wished to discuss a potential investment opportunity. "He's interested in establishing a newspaper," Samuel explained to Sophia as they sat together in the library after closing time. "He's heard about the growth projected for Lusk with the coming railroad and believes a proper paper would be a sound investment." "That would be wonderful for the town," Sophia agreed. "But why consult you specifically?" Samuel hesitated. "Elliot and I have collaborated on ventures before. He values my judgment about emerging communities." He took her hand. "But there's something else you should know about Elliot. He was engaged to my sister Rebecca for nearly 2 years. Sophia's eyebrows rose in surprise. Samuel rarely spoke of his family back east. "Was engaged? What happened?" "Rebecca died," Samuel said quietly. "Typhoid fever 3 years ago." Elliot was devastated. They were to be married the following month. He threw himself into business afterward, traveling constantly, never staying in one place long enough to form new attachments. "How tragic," Sophia murmured, squeezing his hand. "It must be difficult for you to see him, given the memories he represents." Samuel nodded. "It was initially, but Elliot is a good man who loved my sister deeply. In time, our shared grief became a kind of bond." He paused. "There's something else. Elliot was with me when I first considered purchasing land here. He knows about you, about us. I've written to him of our partnership and engagement." "And?" Sophia prompted, sensing there was more. "And he's bringing his younger sister, Charlotte, with him on this trip. She's 24, unmarried, and by Elliot's description, somewhat unconventional in her interests. He mentioned specifically that she's eager to meet you, having been intrigued by what he's told her about our business arrangement and the lending library." Sophia felt a flutter of nervousness. "I see. They'll be our first visitors from your past life. I hope I make a favorable impression." Samuel smiled, lifting her hand to his lips. "You will be entirely yourself, and that will be more than enough." Elliot and Charlotte Parker arrived in Lusk the following week. They were an impressive pair, Elliot tall and distinguished at 35, with intelligent eyes and a reserved manner. Charlotte striking rather than conventionally beautiful, with a direct gaze and confident bearing unusual in a woman of her generation. Sophia liked them immediately. Elliot treated her with genuine respect, asking thoughtful questions about the lending library's operations and listening attentively to her responses. Charlotte was even more engaging, revealing herself to be an amateur botanist who had published articles in scientific journals under a male pseudonym. "It's absurd that I must pretend to be Charles Parker to have my observations taken seriously," Charlotte confided as she and Sophia walked together after dinner at the hotel. "But until society evolves, one must find creative solutions to pursue one's interests." "I understand completely," Sophia replied warmly. "Before Samuel's investment, I was facing the loss of my father's bookshop and being forced into a position as a governess or companion, respectable occupations, certainly, but not what I dreamed of for my life." Charlotte's eyes brightened with interest. "And now you've created something truly meaningful, not just a business but a cultural institution for your community. It's exactly the kind of independence I admire." Their conversation flowed easily, touching on books, scientific discoveries, the challenges of being women with ambitions in a world designed for male achievement. By the end of the evening, Sophia felt she had found not just an acquaintance but a kindred spirit. Samuel watched their interaction with evident pleasure. Later, when he and Sophia had a moment alone, he remarked, "I thought you and Charlotte might find common ground. She's had few opportunities to connect with women who share her intellectual interests." "She's remarkable," Sophia agreed. "I hope we can maintain a correspondence after she returns to Denver." The Parkers remained in Lusk for 10 days. During that time, Elliot indeed established the groundwork for a newspaper, purchasing a vacant building on Main Street and hiring a local man with printing experience to manage operations once equipment arrived. Charlotte divided her time between assisting her brother and exploring the area's flora, often accompanied by Sophia when the library could spare her. The evening before the Parkers' departure, they hosted a dinner at the hotel for Samuel and Sophia, Judge Parker, and several other leading citizens. The conversation was lively, ranging from literature to politics to the economic future of the region. Late in the evening, Elliot raised his glass. "A toast," he announced, "to new beginnings, to Lusk's first newspaper, to Samuel and Sophia's upcoming marriage, and to the power of vision to transform not just individual lives but entire communities." As glasses clinked and congratulations flowed, Sophia felt a profound sense of belonging. These people, some new acquaintances, some longtime residents who had initially doubted her, were now part of a community that respected her, that saw value in her dreams, that supported the life she and Samuel were creating together. The wedding took place on a perfect April day, with wildflowers dotting the prairie and a gentle breeze carrying the scent of sage. The ceremony was held in the town's small church, filled beyond capacity with well-wishers. Even Harriet Miller attended, her previous criticisms apparently forgotten as she dabbed at tears during the exchange of vows. Charlotte Parker had returned for the occasion, serving as Sophia's maid of honor. Elliot stood beside Samuel as best man, his normally reserved expression softened by evident happiness for his friend. Sophia wore a gown of ivory silk, simple but elegant, with her mother's pearl necklace as her only adornment. Samuel, in a formal black suit, looked at her with such undisguised love as she walked down the aisle that several guests were heard to sigh audibly. Their vows were traditional, but spoken with a depth of feeling that gave the familiar words new meaning. When the minister finally pronounced them husband and wife, Samuel's kiss was both tender and passionate, a promise of the life they would share. The celebration afterward, held at Samuel's expanded ranch house, continued well into the evening. Friends from town mingled with Samuel's ranch hands and business associates who had traveled from as far as Denver. Music, dancing, and abundant food created an atmosphere of joyous community. As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the prairie, Samuel drew Sophia away from the festivities to a quiet spot on the porch. "Happy, Mrs. Landon?" he asked softly, his arms encircling her waist. "Completely," Sophia replied, leaning back against his chest. "Though I should note that professionally, I'll still be using Collins for the bookshop. Collins' Books and Lending Library has established its reputation." Samuel chuckled, his breath warm against her neck. "Always the practical businesswoman. It's one of the countless things I love about you." Sophia turned in his embrace to face him. "Do you remember what you said to me the day you proposed our partnership? Dream bigger, I'll help you build it." Samuel nodded, his eyes warm with memory. "I never imagined then how much bigger those dreams would become," Sophia continued. "Not just the library, but us, our life together, the family we'll create, the community we'll help shape. It's so much more than I ever dared to hope for. And it's just the beginning, Samuel promised, drawing her closer. We have a lifetime to dream and build together. As twilight deepened into evening, they rejoined their guests, moving among them as a unit, their hands frequently finding each other's, their shared glances speaking volumes. To those who observed them, the message was clear. Here were two people who had found in each other not just love but partnership in its truest sense, mutual respect, shared purpose, and the courage to imagine a future limited only by the scope of their combined vision. In the years that followed, Sophia and Samuel built that future with the same determination and creativity that had marked their initial partnership. The lending library expanded its programs, becoming a cultural center for the growing town. When the railroad finally arrived in 1880, bringing new residents and increased commerce, Collins Books was ready to serve the community's evolving needs. Samuel's cattle operation prospered as well, establishing him as one of the region's most successful ranchers. But he never allowed business to overshadow his commitment to Sophia and the family they created together. Their first child, a son they named James after Sophia's father, arrived a year after their wedding, followed 2 years later by a daughter, Rebecca, named for Samuel's late sister. By 1885, Lusk had transformed from a small frontier settlement into a proper town with a school, several churches, a newspaper, still owned by Elliot Parker, who visited regularly, and a thriving cultural life centered largely around the institutions Sophia had helped establish. A women's literary society, a children's reading program, adult education classes all operated under her guidance, with a growing staff that allowed her to balance professional commitments with family responsibilities. Charlotte Parker remained a close friend, visiting often and eventually relocating to Wyoming when she was appointed botanist for a government land survey. Her presence enriched Sophia's life immeasurably, providing intellectual companionship and support, especially during a difficult period when Sophia suffered a miscarriage while expecting their third child. That loss tested both Sophia and Samuel, but ultimately strengthened their bond as they grieved together, and then gradually found their way back to joy. When Sophia became pregnant again in 1887, the entire community seemed to hold its breath until the safe arrival of another daughter, whom they named Hope, as a testament to their enduring optimism. Through all life's challenges and triumphs, the partnership that had begun as a business arrangement remained the foundation of their relationship. They made decisions together, supported each other's individual pursuits, and continually encouraged one another to evolve and grow. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Samuel surprised Sophia with a gift that brought her to tears. A first edition of Little Women by Louisa May Alcott, a book that had been significant in her childhood but lost when financial hardships forced her father to sell precious volumes from their personal collection. "How did you find this?" she asked in wonder, carefully turning the pages of the beloved novel. "With persistence," Samuel replied, smiling at her delight, "and connections developed through a decade of book hunting for your shop. I've been searching for this particular edition for 3 years." Sophia looked up at him, love swelling in her heart. "After all this time, you still find ways to astonish me." "As do you," Samuel said, taking her hand. Their children played nearby, James, now 9, and showing his father's quiet confidence, Rebecca, 7, with her mother's love of books, Hope, a precocious 3-year-old who charmed everyone she met. "Look at everything you've built, Sophia. The library, the education programs, our family, the respect you've earned in this community. You took the dream I encouraged and expanded it beyond anything I could have imagined. We built it together, Sophia corrected gently. That's been the beauty of our journey from the beginning, true partnership. That evening, after the children were asleep, Sophia and Samuel sat together on the porch of their home, watching the stars emerge in the vast Wyoming sky. The house had grown over the years, additions built as their family expanded, but this spot remained their favorite retreat, a place to talk, to plan, to simply be together. "You ever think about that first day in the bookshop?" Sophia asked, her head resting on Samuel's shoulder. "When you came in looking for maps and found me instead?" "Often," Samuel admitted, his arm tightening around her. "I remember how you tried to hide that you'd been crying, how passionately you spoke about the geography of lands you'd never seen, how clearly I could see the fire in you that others had tried to dampen." Sophia smiled at the memory. "I was terrified of losing everything, yet somehow found the courage to speak to a stranger about my impossible dreams." "They weren't impossible," Samuel said softly. "They were just waiting for the right moment, the right partnership, to become reality." As the night deepened around them, bringing the cool tranquility of the high plains, Sophia reflected on the journey that had brought them here from a failing bookshop, and a woman punished for having dreams of her own, to this rich, full life they had created together. All because a cowboy had the wisdom to say, "Dream bigger," and the heart to help her build it. "I love you, Samuel Landon," she whispered into the peaceful darkness, "for everything you are and everything you've helped me become." His answer was in the tender kiss he pressed to her forehead, in the steady beat of his heart beneath her cheek, in the home and family surrounding them, proof that dreams, when nurtured by love and determination, could indeed become gloriously, magnificently real. In the years that followed, Sophia and Samuel continued to grow both together and as individuals. By the turn of the century, Collins' books and lending library had expanded to include a proper museum housing artifacts of Wyoming's history, fulfilling another of Sophia's long-held dreams. Samuel's ranching operation had become one of the most respected in the state, known for ethical practices and innovation. Their children flourished as well. James followed in his father's footsteps, studying agriculture and animal husbandry, before returning to help manage the expanding ranch. Rebecca, combining her mother's love of literature with her own interest in law, became one of Wyoming's first female attorneys after studying back east. Hope, their youngest, developed a passion for medicine and eventually established a clinic in Lusk that served the surrounding communities. As they entered their golden years, Sophia and Samuel gradually stepped back from daily management of their respective enterprises, entrusting operations to their children and capable employees they had mentored. This transition gave them time to pursue shared interests, traveling to places they had once only read about together, writing their memoirs, and continuing to advocate for educational opportunities in frontier communities. Their partnership, which had begun with a business proposition in a struggling bookshop, had blossomed into a legacy that extended far beyond their personal happiness. Together, they had helped transform Lusk from a dusty outpost into a vibrant community, where dreams, including those of women, were taken seriously and given room to grow. On their 50th wedding anniversary, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and generations of townspeople whose lives they had touched, Sophia and Samuel renewed the vows they had made so many years before. The celebration was held in the garden of the home they had built together, under the same vast Wyoming sky that had witnessed their journey. As evening fell and lanterns glowed in the gathering darkness, Samuel took Sophia's hand, older now, marked by time but still familiar and beloved, and led her in a slow dance as their family looked on with loving smiles. 50 years, Sophia marveled softly. "When I think of that frightened young woman in the bookshop, so close to losing everything." "She wasn't losing," Samuel corrected gently. "She was just about to find her true way, though she couldn't see it then." Sophia's eyes, still bright with intelligence and warmth despite the passage of years, met his. "Because a kind stranger told her to dream bigger." Samuel smiled, the lines around his eyes deepening. "And she did, far bigger than even I imagined possible." As they moved slowly together under the stars, surrounded by the fruits of their shared vision, Sophia reflected that perhaps this was the true meaning of love, not just passion or comfort or companionship. Though they had enjoyed all these in abundance, but the courage to see in another person possibilities they cannot yet see in themselves, and the commitment to help bring those possibilities to life. In a world that had tried to limit her, Samuel had instead offered expansion. In a society that had punished her for having dreams of her own, he had encouraged her to dream bigger, and then, true to his word, helped her build those dreams into reality. Together, they had created not just a marriage, but a legacy of possibility that would continue long after their own story reached its natural conclusion. And in that knowledge and the love they had shared, the lives they had touched, the community they had helped shape, Sophia found the deepest fulfillment of all her dreams, and the assurance that some loves truly do transcend time, becoming part of the very fabric of the world they leave behind.